Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Once again, I have Logan with me. Logan, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a good week. The gaming news has actually been positive. I don't think there's actually been any negative, bad gaming news. Not really. I've got a huge list here. We have a lot to go over because we actually had to skip a bunch of topics last week and put a few of them in this show. But yeah, a lot to go over. It's been a good week. Have you been playing anything interesting?
Yeah, I've been going back through Jedi Survivor and picking up some, collectibles or seeds or things that I missed. And then I was gonna hop into New Game Plus. And been playing Ravenlock and have been really enjoying that. It's kind of a whimsical Alice in Wonderland type game. And a lot less dark than the traditional Alice in Wonderland or Alice Madness Returns and stuff like that. It's fun. It's by can't remember what else they made, but they made another game that was in Game Pass for a while. It was kind of cute and pixelated, blocky, kind of Minecrafty, but not RPG type game. I think it might have been Earthlock. I can't remember. But it's really fun, and I wrapped up Ghostwire Tokyo as well, and I really enjoyed my time with it.
Nice. I mean, I've mainly been playing not Star Trek, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I put it like this: I haven't finished it yet. I've been obsessed with doing a lot of the side content, and I'll put it out here now. There won't be any spoilers in this week's episode at all. Even the gameplay I've got in the podcast is just fighting and traversal and stuff, so no spoilers at all. But I put it like this: I babble on about Mass Effect all the time, all the time. It's my favorite franchise of all time. I talk about it all the time. I play through the Mass Effect trilogy every year, and I started a new playthrough of that trilogy back in October, and I've been playing it very casually this time around. I've been doing maybe one mission a day or a week, and I've been enjoying the game just as much. Well, I have not went back to Mass Effect since Jedi Survivor came out. That's how good it is. And the biggest draw to me is just the gameplay. The gameplay is so good. And the side quests, I had this worry going into the game that side quests would feel bloated, like they put them in just to make the game a little bit longer. But you feel like
Absolutely not.
yeah, you feel like you want to do the side quests, and you're actually rewarded with good stuff. And I always say this on Twitter, and it triggers some people, that I hate the fact that all RPGs are focused on loot. It's one of the reasons why I talk about Mass Effect 24/7. 3 games, no loot. You can buy armor, stuff like that, but there's no loot at all. You get different weapons, you find them in the field, and you can use them once sometimes, but there's no loot. Every RPG, the developers talk about loot like it's the form of progression. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it's loot based, and I can't stand that at the minute. And this, it's like the loot matters. And it's not even loot. It's like genuine video game style collectibles. And when you collect all the collectibles of a certain type, you're rewarded something. And I just love that. It's a pure video game. And Respawn just don't miss. They make amazing games. Yes, I rant about Apex being a battle royale game, but I'm gonna do that about every battle royale game. But they've made something special here. And thankfully it's outpacing the first game when it comes to sales, which makes me happy because, this was originally planned as a trilogy. And I have to wonder, the sky's the limit for them. What they're going to do next, because they've already confirmed they're making a Star Wars first-person shooter, which it's going to be multi-platform. And there's also going to be a Star Wars RTS. And I just think, how is that studio going to pull off an RTS? And will it come to console? Because they make good games consistently. And for people that haven't played Jedi Survivor yet, I get the price might put some people off because $70 or £70 is a lot to ask for, but you get 10% off if you get it digitally. And if you use your rewards, it's worth it. I'm about 32 hours in. It's 65% through, I think, and none of the game seems repetitive. Everything I'm doing feels new. You discover areas constantly. It is the pure definition of the term Metroidvania. And, Hogwarts Legacy is my game of the year. Probably not for long because it's so good. And, I'll probably finish it. I'll definitely finish it by the next episode. But, outside of Star Wars, I've played pretty much nothing. Just pre-ordered that Star Trek game that comes out next week. Very much looking forward to that. But yeah, I think we'll get into some topics because we have a lot to go over. So first up, we have to talk. Continue.
Sorry. I was just gonna add one thing that's not really spoilery about Jedi Survivor is it's not a game that has a moment at the end where it's like once you hit this, you cannot come back and do quests or other things. It's very much you do everything and then it will let you go and do stuff, and it makes sense with the way things are set. It's not one of those to where it's like you have a moment of no return. So for all those collectibles and all those like random things, for the most part, you can go back and do them after you finish the main story if you so choose.
Oh, that's good to know, because like with a game like the first game had collectibles and there wasn't really much point to them. But in this game, you feel like you want to collect them. There's different I think there's like 8 different kinds of collectibles, and they all have a purpose, which is great. And going into and this isn't a spoiler either, by the way. In the first game had 6 planets, I believe, and all of them were around about the same size. But where I'm up to in the game so far, there's 2 main planets which are relatively big. Apparently there's 6 in total, but like I was worried when I heard that there's 2 main planets. Well, now I'm not worried at all because like the game's amazing. The game has a purpose for each planet, which I love. But yeah, before I continue talking about this game anymore, I'll say this: the Star Wars era of video games is back. And it's
golden era.
Yeah, like how many years did we go without having proper Star Wars games on a regular basis? It was a long time. EA had the rights exclusivity to Star Wars games for like a decade, and now other developers can make them. But like in last generation, we got Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2. The second game had a campaign. We got Jedi Fallen Order, which obviously incredible, and then we got Star Wars Squadrons. We also got the Lego games, but those are a completely different thing. And like now, this new generation, we got Star Wars Squadrons like early this generation. Jedi Survivor is amazing. We're getting 2 more games by Respawn. Ubisoft is making an open world action RPG in the Star Wars space. I've heard that there's a Mandalorian style game in development. I can't find out who's making it, but it very much seems like that's real. So it's good to know all this stuff's happening. Also, you have KOTOR, which is, that's a weird story. It's not
Eclipse.
Yeah, the Eclipse game, which is apparently rumored to come out in 2028. Oof, that's probably going to be a next generation launch game. Like, wow. But yeah, either way, it's a good time to be a Star Wars fan in the game space. And I'll say this, even though I haven't finished it yet, it's probably the best Star Wars in the past decade.
Oh, unquestionably, in my opinion. It's like I revere Knights of the Old Republic, and it and its sequel are were my favorite games of all time. I would say I would put this in the same category and put it neck to neck, if not tied with them. I was 100% serious last time when I said it might be my favorite game ever. And when I tweeted out that we should have an episode devoted solely to talking about, stuff, if you want to. But it's so impactful and powerful. I adore this game.
Yeah, I mean, to avoid spoilers for people, I think at some point in the future we'll have like a segment at the end of an episode, maybe for like spoilers, but that's for another day. But yeah, that's all the Star Wars talk done. It's how often does a game really live up to its expectations? Not often. Elden Ring was like hype for years. It came out and it's a masterpiece. It lived up to it. But a lot of the time, that doesn't happen. And these games put a lot of pressure on developers. They have to live up to the first game, especially if the first game was really good and they exceeded that. And like I played through Jedi Fallen Order just before the sequel came out, and I was thinking all the way through, like, how are they doing? Like, how are they going to exceed this game? Like, how are they going to make it better? Because I was completely fine with them making a game that was somewhat okay compared to the first game. I didn't expect it at all to be better, which is great. Like, even this is going to turn into the Star Wars show this way, but before we talk about the topics, I have to say this. My only really complaint with the first game was enemy types. There wasn't really many, but in the sequel, there's tons. There's a ton of different organic types, like your stormtroopers and stuff. Battle droids are in the game now. There's multiple different versions of each battle droid. I can't talk about spoilers, but there's a lot of bosses in this game. A lot of optional bosses. Like the optional content.
Yeah, secret bosses.
Yeah, like yesterday I found a secret boss room most people will never find. And that is awesome. But yeah, let's get into the topics. It's not the Star Wars show today. The Xbox 360 backwards compatible sale is on. I highly recommend people check these out. I always talk about these sales because, especially over the past few weeks with certain games getting delisted, a bunch of Splinter Cell games, Battlefield Bad Company 1 and 2, Battlefield 1940 or whatever it's called. I highly recommend people check these out because a lot of the games are like 60 or more % off. I was just on the store before, and a lot of games are like £2, £5 or something. So like you can get a lot of games for a cheap price, and I highly recommend people try them out. The 360 generation is a generation I think is basically timeless. I love the games from that generation. And a lot of those games do actually have improvements like, higher frame rates and improved resolution and all that stuff. Okay. We have way too much to go over today. Okay, this is going to anger a lot of people. So Overwatch 2. That game got announced and people were kind of wondering why does it exist? Now, I don't play Overwatch, but I've kept my eyes on all the drama. The game launched with basically all the same maps, just with different color palettes and all this stuff. So it was basically the same game, just reskinned. And people wondered, like, why does it exist? And the developers were like, hey, this game is going to get a PvE component or like / campaign. And that got me excited. I was like, I don't play Overwatch, but I will buy it in the future just for the campaign. Because they've got cool characters, if they can flesh out a story with all that stuff, with cutscenes, I'm all for it. Well, they announced today they completely cancelling the PvE content. Meaning if, like, the reason for it to exist, basically, outside of an update, which they could have done, they've cancelled all that content. So, like, people are livid. Like, remember how people were angry and acting like the end of the world happened because of, Redfall? And how its perception wasn't that good.
I remember that.
Like, imagine an entire purpose of a game to exist being cancelled. And people are angry. Like, I'd be wondering if anyone in chat plays Overwatch. Like, I want to know their opinion because, like, I don't play PvP games outside of Fall Guys, which makes me an online filthy casual. But, like, people are angry. Like, Logan, did you see this at all?
Yeah, it's kind of was a big reason why they justified making an Overwatch 2. They said, why not just continue Overwatch indefinitely and just, keep adding characters and modes and stuff. They're like, no, we need to make a new game and we're going to bring some new experiences. And then lo and behold, you cancel one of the biggest drawing points and reasons for its existence. It's an unfortunate, real bad look for the Overwatch and Blizzard right now. Right on the heels of them potentially releasing a major hit in Diablo 4, and they've got their survival game in development. They've had really good positive press of late, but this was not good.
Yeah, what happened was bad because like I can't stand multiplayer at the minute. Like, I play Call of Duty with one of my mates, but outside of that, I don't really care for PvP anymore. But, like, they almost had me pay full price. Like, I was even thinking about buying it a few months ago, thinking, I'll have that game ready, for when it gets its PvE campaign. And, yeah, what a shame. Like, almost an entire reason for a game to exist is just gone. And, like, Overwatch changing what it changed, it didn't really change much. Like, I've always wondered, like FIFA, for instance, prints money. But all you pay for, essentially, every year is a slight physics model change and roster updates. It's the same with Madden. And, I don't, like, I understand why EA makes all this money every year by these annual sports games because people buy them. But they don't really need to exist. And for Overwatch 2, like, every time I saw screenshots, like, in some cases, it looked worse. The lighting model didn't look as good in some maps. Some of the character models kind of looked worse. Like, what an awful, like, crap storm. like, and the thing is, it's a multi-platform game. People don't lose their minds over multi-platform games, I've noticed recently. No matter what happens or how bad it is, it's not the end of the world. People just kind of, like, look past it. Like, look at the reaction today online. Like, Redfall had a way worse reaction, and Overwatch is such a bigger game. But yeah, I just felt need to bring that up because, like, online people are losing it. Although tomorrow everyone will forget. Anyway, we'll move on. Okay, so the ESRB ratings just leaked for Stray, the cat game on PlayStation 5. Turns out it's come to Xbox. Obviously, I think it was a 2-year exclusivity period. It doesn't really surprise me, like, let's be honest. A lot of these games are multi-platform from the get-go, from the start, and then one of these deals pops along, and then some consoles just don't get that content. A lot of people do seem excited, though. I haven't really paid attention to the game since it came out, but yeah, I mean, it looks cool. Like, what's your thoughts, Logan? Because there seem to be a lot of people that look forward to this.
Yeah, I mean it's a cute little cat game with a backpack and you run around. I mean it seems fun. It definitely does it. It's not like a big draw to me personally. If it's a decent price or on sale, I'll pick it up and check it out. Like, I thought it was interesting that it was thrown in there for one of the Game of the Year nominees last year. I thought that was kind of eye raising a little bit, but who knows? Maybe it's great, and I'm happy for everybody who gets to experience it now on Xbox and potentially Kenna as well, because there was some people asking them about. I've given up hope on it coming to Xbox, and they say don't give up hope or never give up hope or this or this. So maybe there's still a chance for that too.
Yeah, I mean, Kenna Bridges' Spirits does interest me way more, just because I like that style. It has that whole, like, DreamWorks / Pixar look to it, and I wouldn't be shocked if we hear about that soon. Maybe it, like, Microsoft's E3 thing. We've seen that before with other times deals. I think like Hellblade, the original Hellblade, I think that was announced at Microsoft's E3 showcase, stuff like that. So it wouldn't really surprise me. But yeah, it's good to see these games go multi-platform because these indie developers, like, they need to make a lot of money, right? We've seen so many developers get shut down over the past few years that locking in exclusivity can hurt developers sometimes. Sometimes it can be, beneficial, but sometimes it can just end them. And when these games come out, I don't see a lot of talk after, like, a week. Maybe it's like, maybe Sony needs to help promote them or whatever, but hey, it's good news. And it was blatantly a leak. One of the things people can do is that if they are unsure about a game coming to a platform, just check ESRB. Like, a lot of ratings get leaked early. Way early. Like, I put it like this. So, a while ago, and it was probably on one of our first shows, I was talking about Final Fantasy XIV, the MMO, coming to Xbox, because it was rated in Brazil for Xbox, and it just never happened. So, we don't even know what happened with that, but whenever these ESRB leakings or PEGI have leaked, they've all came true. So, it's just an eventuality. It's not an if, it's a when. But yeah, cool news for people. More games, whatever. Okay, new Game Pass games. And I have a bit of a rant after this. So, Microsoft put out their picture they do every month with all the new games coming to Game Pass. So, you have Massive Chalice, you have Railway Empire 2, Cassette Beasts, Ghost Law, Chicory. I can't pronounce that because I don't speak Chinese. FIFA 23, that's a big one. Planet of Lana. Now, the two big ones in this list actually, Cassette Beast is rated really well on Metacritic at the minute for PC. People love that game. It's a Pokemon style RPG, and Planet of Lana, like that was originally advertised for Xbox, I think like 2.5 years ago. It's just like 2D indie game that's set across like the cosmos, across multiple different timelines and stuff. Like it's
Beautiful.
yeah, beautiful game. And I thought this is a really cool list. In my recent video where I posted like 10 games coming to Xbox in May, some of these games were featured. However, this is where my rant comes into it. Every time I put out one of these lists, I get a bunch of replies going, meh, it's a pass for me this month, or whatever. And every time I go to their feed, and it's just like, they only talk and post about AAA games. And I know before we went live, Logan, you said that you wanted to talk about indie games. Like, indie games actually take risk. Like, they are some of the most refreshing games and some of the really great palate cleansers that we need more of. Like, in the AAA gaming space, there's next to no risks. Everything you get is bog standard, done before, it's going to happen again. But in the indie space, like, people need to pay attention to these games because that's where innovation comes from these days. Like, we do have the occasional game, like in July, that Immortals of Avon comes out, which is a magic first-person shooter, which is really refreshing. But, like, people just, like, write off these games just because the indie are AA, and that really infuriates me because there's so much potential and so many good games out there that are small. And I guarantee you this, as soon as people start hearing about these Metacritic scores for these indie games, then they'll start paying attention to them. Because it really annoys me that people just write off games until you see a number on a website. Like, Logan, what's your thoughts on this? Because, like, everyone talks about AAA games all the time. And I think these indie games need more talk because, look, every AAA game at the minute is what? It's a first-person shooter, it's a first-person RPG, third-person shooter, third-person action-adventure game. It's all the same. Like, these indie games are different.
Yeah, indies, push the narrative. And, remember Reggie from Nintendo at the Game Awards a few years ago, he had a really interesting statement where he talked about, like, all these major games, like, for the most part, started off as, like, an indie at one point, kind of. Like, a lot of these franchises, they started off small. Like, Nintendo originally, their idea, like Zelda, Mario, like, they were smaller. And then, so was Sony, so was, Microsoft, and so were... Obviously, it's completely different now compared to then, but, like, all these studios start from somewhere. And the indie studio today could be making these giant things in the future. And, you should always watch them with great interest. And, like, they push the envelope, and I've seen some smaller games have ideas that pop up in bigger titles because they're like, you know what? That was a really good idea this person made in this game. I think we could add this to our franchise. And the fact that people assume bigger is always better, bigger, money scale is always better in a game is ridiculous. Like, there are so many bloated games that feel the exact bloody same as the previous 10 entries in that series, like, coming out every year. Like, I love series games, like, Gears, Halo, any Star Wars thing I'll check out. Like, I love my franchises. There's a difference between really good, well-done franchises and just gotta cash them checks for rent. Like, just put a name on it and ship it out, and the game is junk. Like, there's way too much of that going on right now. Where you have, indies like Oxenfree or Shovel Knight or, My Friend Pedro. You've got all these just random ideas. It's like, who would have thought of a hitman talking to a sentient banana and he's flying around doing this? Or, a knight with a shovel as his weapon, and it's like a parody of the golden era of, side scrollers, but has a bunch of modern elements as well. And Oxenfree, which we've talked about before, it's like these really push the envelope and idea. And these indie studios, great chance if they're very successful, they become the next big developers, or they join a company or a platform. Like, that's how the industry thrives and survives. So the whole idea of, oh, I'm unfamiliar with this studio, this game must suck, is just ignorant at the very kindest way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's so much innovation in that space that people need to pay attention. Like, look at Vampire Survivors. It looks like a game made in 1984. However, it won Best Game of the Year by the BAFTA Game Awards. Like, people are just going to overlook look that. Like, the most prestigious game awards you can win, the BAFTA Game Awards. Like, I think people just need to, like, look past the whole AA thing, because every time I talk about the game, and people can look at the comments on these tweets, that if I post about a game, I'll have one or two replies going, I hope it's AAA. And it's like, the quality of a game doesn't matter on how many A's it has. Look at Hellblade, the first game. That was essentially an indie game / AA game, right? And it's getting a AAA sequel now because people had so much faith in it. Another game which I talk about a lot on the show, I talk about it a lot on Twitter, is a game called Hard Space Shipbreaker. It's a first-person game where you dismantle starships in 0G in like these like shipyards, and you salvage them, right? It's 0G. It simulates hundreds, if not thousands, of objects in real time in 0G, and it's the most next-generation game out to date. Nobody talks about it. Why? Because there's no cutscenes outside of the opening, and it's not third person, and it had next to no talk because of the way it was advertised. It had next to no advertising, outside of the Game Pass stuff, and it was a huge Kickstarter success. And I just found out recently, by the way, they did an interview on Xbox Newswire that indie game, Hard Space Shipbreaker, is, because of its success, is now a full-fledged franchise that's going to get spin-offs and new games set in that universe.
Great news.
Yeah, and like, I was ecstatic about that. Like, nobody's talking about that. People are just talking about Redfall and the CMA stuff. Although we'll be talking about the CMA and the Activision stuff later, though. But like we need to talk about these games, because like the bog standard topics at the minute across the board is GTA, Switch Pro, what else? Some other clickbait crap. And like, most of these games get
Starfield doomed.
Yeah, Starfield doomed. And by the way, I have probably my biggest rant to date coming later about Starfield. Not necessarily about the game, but about people talking about this. But yeah, people need to talk about these games, and it really bothers me. Like, people, look at my replies on Twitter to every single time I post one of those pictures that's showing you the games coming to Game Pass. People just automatically write these games off because the indie. Who cares? We get AAA games in Game Pass, and we get indie games. Like, it shouldn't matter. And it just annoys me. Like, people need to open up their eyes. Like, I put it like this. In the 90s, when I was a little kid, I used to play only platformers and fighting games. And then I was introduced to things like Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VII, a few other games, Colony Wars, G-Police, basically any sci-fi game that was on that generation I had. And it opened my eyes. I was experimenting with different genres, and I feel like too many people lock themselves into one or two different things now. And that is like, they also completely lock off like single A games, double A, indie games, co-op experiences, whatever. And it's just sad. It's just a bit sad because people are just limiting what they're playing. And like, that's boring. Like, if you look at your library and you just see one or two different genres, like, what's the point? Like, you're missing out on so much. Logan, have you got anything else on the topic before I rant for another half an hour?
Yeah, I've got a couple things. Like it's kind of akin to that whole thing, but like the whole idea of every game needs to be lifelike visuals. You know how boring that would be if every game just looked the bloody same? I mean, like, I love, like, you've got Tunic the Fox, and it's this cute, art that harkens back to classic Zelda. You've got, Gears of War with its photorealism and grittiness, but then, you've got, Wind Waker and it's cel shaded, or you've got, just all these games across, the spectrum that you can play, and they're different experiences, different visuals, everything. Like, I remember, like, you looked up games from, like, the 2010s era, and you look, a bunch of them had the same color font, like this kind of yellowish, brownish aesthetic. And then you go, okay, so that's that era. But it feels like this era, everybody's just pushing for this photorealism, and kind of like some of these other really creative risk visual effects get, pushed aside or less attention to. Like Hi-Fi Rush was a risk, and it's brilliant, and it's one of the visually most impressive games I've ever played. Would you call that lifelike at all? Absolutely not. There's no way on earth that anything in that game looks lifelike or realistic, but it's such a breath of fresh air and pristine, and you see the beauty in their creativity and what they're trying to put out there. Was something, they have Easter eggs and teases to all kinds of, established lore and universes and things, but they also take it in a new direction, and I love it. And as far as like, indie versus AAA, I only play AAA, I only play indie, whatever. Like, my library's filled with all kinds of things. I've got puzzle games, shooters, horror games, sports games, pretty much every genre. And my most played game probably of the last 2 years has been Power Wash Simulator, honestly. Like, I play that game pretty much every day, just at least for a little bit every day when I'm listening to a podcast or, listening to some music, or I just want to chill, get my head right before bed. I'll just pop that on and play it. Like, it's a good palate cleanser as well when you're going from a heavy emotional game like Jedi Survivor to transition to a different type of game. It's like there is beauty in the eye of the beholder, and there's a lot of good games out there. Don't limit yourself just because it's different than what you would have expected. Like, I never personally would have thought cleaning a pyramid or cleaning a car in a game would be fun. It's like, I hate having to wash my car in real life. Why would I enjoy doing it in a game? But then I do it in a game, I'm like, you know what? This is actually kind of fun. So, I don't know. Just keep your options open.
Before we continue with the rest of the topic, we have the first super chat of the day by Nick W. Thank you very much for $10. Says, I play everything except for racing and stealth games. See, but you do play a lot of games. Like, I see you post on Twitter all these different clips of every game you're finishing. Like, you have a wide variety of, like, games you like. Like everyone has certain genres they just don't like. For instance, I was saying before, I used to play fighting games a lot as a kid. For some reason, the second I turned 19, I couldn't drink tequila anymore, and fighting games just didn't resonate with me. Which I still can't explain to this day. One day I'm playing Tekken, the next day I hated it. Same with every other fighting game. Although I am looking forward to seeing the next Mortal Kombat in action. But yeah, thank you very much for the $10 super chat, Nick W. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that I'm not saying like people have to like everything, right? Everyone's going to have these games they just don't like. Like Logan, there must be one genre you just genuinely don't like.
Like you, I'm generally not a fighting game guy. I'm just not that good at them. Frankly, I'm not the best at button mashing stuff. And, like when I have the option to tweak that in games, I do. It's just, I'm not that good at it for some reason. But, and I like an experience that's generally different than what the fighting game aesthetic is. Like, Smash Brothers is a little different to me because it's kind of nostalgia ridden and kind of a different fighting experience to me than like a Mortal Kombat or something like that. But, fighters, generally, I don't like racers except for Forza Horizon. Like, you wouldn't catch me playing, regular Forza. Like, I just cannot stand the just general, sim racing game. And stuff like that, like, I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, but I'm happy people enjoy them. My whole point is like, not everything's for everybody, but don't just see something and just go, oh yeah, that thing's crap, I don't even know what that is. It just, give it a shot in Game Pass, and if you hate it, cool, you didn't have to buy it, and if you liked it, there you go, you found something new.
Yeah, we have another super chat by Matt D for £5. Says, Logan, Power Wash Simulator is my Yu-Gi-Oh! I'll never pronounce that right, by the way. Great palate cleanser. I mean...
yes, Yu-Gi-Oh's good stuff.
Yeah, like, the Power Wash Simulator is a weird one because you literally clean crap. Like, that's all you do, and it's weirdly addictive. Like, the other day I was playing that for the Final Fantasy VII level, where you clean the bike, And all I could think was like, I can't believe Square Enix is not bringing this game over, but god damn it, I'm going to clean this bike. like,
Yeah,
like
I
that,
felt that.
yeah, like that's our Final Fantasy VII content. It's cleaning a bike in a model of Midgar. Thank you, Square Enix. But yeah, thank you very much, Matt D, for the £5 super chat. Before we continue with the other topics, please like, share, and subscribe if you're enjoying the show. It really helps the channel out. Like as you can see, super chats alive if you want to support all that crap. Anyway, we'll move on. Speaking of Star Wars, we were talking about before. That's how I spent my birthday the other day. I just played Star Wars Jedi Survivor and eating pizza. I highly recommend people do that.
That's a good birthday.
Yeah, it was a good birthday. I'm not gonna lie. Like, even though my night out at the pubs has been like put off for another week and a half, it wasn't a bad day. I'll put it that way. Star Wars and pizza, good times. We have a bunch of new games to talk about which are coming out soon. So Aliens Dark Descent, that comes out in 1 month. It's hard to talk about this game, let's be honest, because of the way it is. So in most like turn-based strategy games or strategy games like this, you move individual soldiers. Well, in this game, they've clearly wanted to aim this at a wide audience. So rather than like the XCOM way or the Marvel's Midnight Suns way of moving individual characters on a board before you do all your moves, well, in real time, you move the entire squad all at once, and then no matter what action needs to be taken, the AI will select the correct like squad member to deal with what you want to happen. So if you want to like shut a plasma door, or shut a door with a plasma cutter or something like that, they'll send over the correct person. Really cool way of doing it. Anyway, that comes out in a month. It's a strategy game. I think more people need to pay attention to it because of just what it is. Let's be honest, we don't get Aliens games that often. Like how many have we had in the past generation? 2. We had Alien Isolation and Aliens Fireteam Elite, both of which are great, by the way. Logan, are you looking forward to that though? Because it looks good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Alien is one of my, favorite franchises to get, expanded universe type content like, books or films or shows or games, graphic novels, whatever. I love Alien, so I'm definitely down for this. And I am still to this day miffed and peeved about how Alien Isolation was received in certain critical outlets because it was so hard. Like, that game did such amazing stuff. Like, the AI in it is unprecedented. The story is great. The game is just heartbreakingly terrifying. I love it, and I so wish we could get a true sequel to it.
Yeah, some media outlets gave that like a 6 out of 10, which is mind-boggling.
It's not like at a 58 somewhere. I can't remember.
Yes.
Somewhere.
So I'm looking at the Metascores right now, and I don't care about Metascores, but some of these outlets like went in on it. For Xbox One, I got a 78 on Metacritic. On PlayStation 4, I got a 79. On PC, I got 81. But like those are way too low, in my opinion. Like that's one of the most immersive games I've ever played. Like they nailed that like late 70s sci-fi aesthetic, like to a nail. It was perfect. And I don't want to mention certain media outlets, but you can look like, okay, I'm looking right now. That certain media outlet, yeah, you're right, gave it a 59. What were they thinking? Like that's not a 59. Like I would rate Alien Isolation, and bear in mind I'm a scaredy cat. Like scary games really scare me. Like it took me 33 hours to finish that game, and I spent 90% of the time crawling underneath desks, hiding in lockers, scared. And I played with the Kinect on, by the way. So if I coughed or sneezed or anything, the alien would know where I was at. It was a good way of playing the game, though. But yeah, hopefully we do see a sequel to that. That is rumored, by the way. Screw it. We'll talk about the other Alien games while we're on it. So there's a few different Alien games in development as well as Aliens Dark Descent. There's a horror game by Nacon Studios, which should be interesting. They haven't gave us any details, but we might see something this summer. If it's anything like Alien Isolation, I'm sold. And apparently we're getting a third-person Aliens game inspired by Dead Space. Now, when I heard that, I just had a grin on my face because that sounds perfect. Like, Logan, I know you probably want that, right?
Oh, both of those sound amazing. Like basically, if it's an Aliens game that is actually done well, I will be just euphoric and over the moon. Like I can't wait. Like strategy game, shooter, horror, whatever. Just give us more good alien games, please. I remember that canceled one that was supposedly going to be a Mass Effect type game from Obsidian. I mean, to this day, that's one of those projects that really stings.
Yeah, it's good news that we're seeing these like properties get like big games because I feel like last generation, like I don't know, it just felt like we got less than the one before. And I love the Aliens franchise in general. I think they could do so much when it comes to games, but in the past we've had some bad ones. Let's be honest. Aliens Colonial Marines wasn't that good, was it? Now AVP I will defend to this day. It was pretty fun. Its multiplayer was actually surprisingly good. Really surprising. But yeah, more Alien games coming, and that comes out next month. Really cool stuff. And there's a game that got announced this past week, and I was actually surprised that it was kind of under the radar across the board. And it's called Chrono Odyssey, and it's a Unreal Engine 5 MMO coming to next generation consoles and PC, and it's arguably one of the best looking games I've ever seen. Now, normally when we see these games, that look this realistic, sometimes they turn out to not even be real games. It's happened in the past. I won't mention certain developers, but every single time there's an Unreal Engine 5 open world RPG or MMO announced, the chances are it's fake. I can't name them because of legal reasons, but there's certain games announced that look very realistic that aren't real, and people are very suspicious that they aren't real. Well, the reason I think this is real is because there's an article on Xbox Newswire, and there's a trailer, an official trailer on the official Xbox page. So I'm thinking it's actually real because Microsoft actually vet these things. So does PlayStation as well, outside of Abandoned. But yeah, it looks great. Like, I think consoles need MMOs. But my biggest issue with MMOs at the minute is that they all kind of play the same. You click a button on PC or mouse and keyboard, you wait a minute, an action happens, you wait for a cooldown, you do it again. They don't feel like action games, and that's the biggest problem to me. But it looks like it's action based. There was something about like how it's actually made for a controller, which is really good, and I think we need that, especially on console. Like, if you've ever played Neverwinter Nights on console or Star Trek Online, ouch. Like, as much as I like Star Trek Online, it has arguably the worst controls on console at the minute. Like, Logan, what's your thoughts? Because, like, MMOs is something we need more of. I know people, we still want things like Star Wars and, Final Fantasy 14 to come over, but, like, this Unreal Engine 5 game looks good.
I'm actually unfamiliar with this one. This is the first time I'm hearing about this MMO. But, super realistic MMO would be cool. Like you were saying, that makes you a little paranoid and suspicious because of some other things that have floated out there that seem to be less than maybe actual. And along the line of more MMOs for console, like it feels like the Old Republic or the other Final Fantasy game. Like if Xbox could throw the bag at EA and BioWare, they have a good relationship with them. Maybe even help them get ported to console. Like that would be huge to have Old Republic on Xbox. That would be massive. I mean, Square's relationship with Xbox is what it is right now, and it's not exactly looking cheerful and rosy. So I kind of doubt we are gonna get a Final Fantasy MMO. But you have a good relationship with EA, so try to get Old Republic on there.
Yeah, at this point, it's turning into a Star Wars show. I port beg the Old Republic maybe once every 2 weeks on Twitter. It's an MMO that really should come over. It's BioWare. They do good storytelling. It's Star Wars. Like, you can watch all the cutscenes on YouTube. Those Star Wars cutscenes are beautiful. Like, I watch them maybe once a month, just because they look so good. The 8K version is up on YouTube, which is weird, but hey, it looks gorgeous. But yeah, we need more MMOs on console, and especially ones with like good controls. Like I'll talk about Star Trek Online again. Great game, horrific, absolutely horrific controls. You'd think my cat came up with those controls, which was sad because when they announced the game for console, they're like, "Oh yeah, we completely revamped the game for a controller." No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Like, and I get it. It could be hard for these games to come over, and it may take time, but like that game's awful when it comes to its controls and UI. Anyway, we'll move on. But yeah, Unreal Engine 5 game. The cool thing about that game is that, you know, in Diablo you have these like world bosses, and other MMOs you have world bosses, these massive colossal beasts where there's lots of people on the playing field attacking this boss. Well, this looked like it was like full on action based. It looked like Elden Ring combat mixed with like Devil May Cry, but it's an MMO. And it is a very generic name, let's be honest. Chrono Odyssey. Like it sounds like an AI came up with that. But anyway, it's coming to Xbox in the future. I'll play it. It looks really cool. Anyway, we'll move on. You know, we have a lot to talk about. So let's get the Assassin's Creed stuff out of the way. So for legal reasons, I can't read certain things because there's a lot of stuff been going on. But anyway, a bunch of possible Assassin's Creed things have leaked. Now, Assassin's Creed leaks on a yearly basis. Every single time there's a new Assassin's Creed game, it leaks without fail. And ever since we got the trailer for the one last year, Assassin's Creed Mirage, they've been silent. The game has apparently been pushed to October. It may be pushed to November. Anyway, it looks to be going back to Assassin's Creed's roots, which I personally think the game needs, at least for fans like me who maybe gets a bit burnt out by the whole let's have a massive open world with nothing to do where it's all about loot. Well, anyway, this is what the game apparently has. So the game originally started as a DLC for Valhalla, but it became so big they decided to make it its own game. We've had this before with other games such as Saints Row 4. It was originally going to be called Saints Row 3 Enter the Dominatrix. Then they changed it, obviously. The gameplay is closer to Assassin's Creed Origins with a mix of old-style Assassin's Creed combat, which is really good. There's 4 main assassination targets. It's closer to Assassin's Creed 1, which, hey, this is good news. Because I feel like, especially Assassin's Creed Odyssey, they bloated out that game with like 40 different targets across basically an entire continent. like I love Odyssey, by the way. I love Origins, I love Odyssey, but like Valhalla, that game was just too big. I love the fact it was set in the UK, but man, like I shouldn't have put 90 hours into a game and then like find out I'm like 20% into the game. That should never be a thing. Anyway, we'll continue. There's almost no mythological aspects in this game whatsoever, which is great to hear. The story is about Basim, as we've heard before, and he's in the trailers. It's about him going from a thief to a full-on assassin. It's going to be talking about how the first Assassin's Creed Order is founded, which we've never seen in a game before. Origins kind of hinted at that. And there's more stealth, more tailing and listening missions, so more like Assassin's Creed 1 and 2. And yeah, they're going to have the notoriety system back, which we haven't seen since Assassin's Creed, Brotherhood? So it's been like 13 years since we've had the notoriety system in an Assassin's Creed game. The Eagle is back in Assassin's Creed, but we also get an Eagle Vision back. We haven't had Eagle Vision since, Assassin's Creed Unity or Assassin's Creed 4? It's been a long time. But yeah. Oh yeah, there's no dialogue options in this game. So it's literally back to Assassin's Creed 2. Everything I see about this game looks great. Looks great. You can also hire mercenaries, much like you did in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. So I just look at these leaks and think, this is everything I've wanted Assassin's Creed to go back to for years. Like, Assassin's Creed 1 through 4 fans, I think, are really going to love this game. Logan, what's your thoughts? Because I know you like Assassin's Creed as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Like, it reads like a, parchment of what you'd want in an older style Assassin's Creed game. And that was the glory era of the franchise to me. 1, 2, And then 3 wasn't my favorite, but I really liked 4. And then it just after that they just got so massive. Like it's one thing to have a massive open world, but it's another thing when it's like there's so many fetch quests. It makes you feel like you're being given busy work instead of plot or meaningful side content. And I feel like they've finally taken all that criticism to heart, and they're toning it down and reshaping and going back to a method that people really liked, but also, tweaking it and adding some more modern mechanics. And to me, that sounds like a perfect mix.
Yeah, I mean, I love the franchise, and like I have a video on the channel from 2016 where I predicted that the game was going to turn into an RPG, and then it happened. Like, it wasn't off any leak or anything. I just saw the direction the franchise was going, and I was thinking, oh, it's blatantly going to turn into an RPG. And it happened. But, like, for the longest time, people now have, like me, like, I loved Odyssey. I loved Origins. There's things about Valhalla I love. I love the visuals. I love the combat. But it's, like, it's 80,000 square miles of map. And most of it's empty. And I get that's what the UK was like back then. It's very authentic. But back then, we didn't really have much in the UK. We had a few castles, there was tents all over the place, some farms. But, like, as someone that, did history at school, the UK was kind of boring back then. Like, there wasn't much, We had a bunch of artifacts from, like, when the Romans invaded. That's it. But, yeah, it looks like a good direction for the franchise. However, the bad thing is that this is a one-off title, according to Ubisoft. So Assassin's Creed Red and the other stuff, like those are big open world action RPGs. They've already confirmed this. My hope is that this sells insanely well to the point where Ubisoft actually thinks maybe we'll do 2 sets of Assassin's Creed games, the traditional style and the new style, because Assassin's Creed has always sold well, especially in the UK. Like Assassin's Creed 1, millions out of the back. Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, even 3 did well. Assassin's Creed 4, I think, was maybe one of the best selling today. I love Assassin's Creed 4. Like, that is a genuine, awesome pirate experience with arguably the best ship battle system I've ever played. Like, incredible game. The fact that you can swing onto other ships and just continue fighting other pirates, it's amazing. There's nothing else like that. And, Unity, we all saw what happened with Unity. Syndicate had cool characters, but the open world was bland, the mission structure was horrible, and being asked after every mission, hey, did you like this mission? Would you like to see this in the future? Like, don't give me a questionnaire after every mission. Like, stop it. Thankfully, they don't do that anymore, but that really triggered me, like, back in the day. And then they turned into action RPGs. Origins had a lot of story. It was great. The characters were great. The setting was amazing. Having open world Egypt. Odyssey, full-on action game. I love Odyssey, but we saw the franchise take a massive turn back then. And Valhalla, Valhalla's the only mainline Assassin's Creed game I haven't finished. Because I feel like I'm not making any progress every time I play it. But yeah, anyway, it's coming out this year. It should be the game people have been wanting, especially been wanting a more traditional AC game. Awesome stuff. Anyway, we'll continue. Okay, so there's a game coming out next month for Xbox. It's a JRPG style game. I've been mentioning that. If people like Persona on Xbox and you want more of that style of game, there's a game coming out in a few weeks called Loop 8. Now, the story's a bit weird about this because it's set in the 1980s, I believe, in a seaside town in Japan, which is cool. But you play as the son of a family that's passed away on a space station, and you are the last remaining survivor. Now, those things don't mix, in my opinion. Seaside town, Japan, 80s, but you're the last survivor on a space station. Even though I say it doesn't mix, I love the idea of it. I think it sounds amazing. And it looks very much like Persona, but with, maybe less combat. There's a lot of dialogue options and all that stuff, but it looks great. We see these smaller developers bring their JRPGs over, and they seem perfectly fine bringing their games over. It's getting a physical release, I believe, in the US. So if you live outside the US and you want a physical copy, you may need to import it, unfortunately. But yeah, the game looks great. Logan, have you kept up with this one at all?
Yeah, I've been seeing some stuff about this one, and I'm all for more Japanese games coming to the platform. And the fact it's getting a physical is awesome, especially from a smaller publisher, smaller studio. So inclined to support that a lot. And it just goes to show there is interest and desire for more of these games on the platform. No matter what these anonymous avatars or, fanboys are telling you, there is an appetite and desire for more of these games on the platform. The only ones not, you know, agreeing with that are people who have a certain agenda or apparently Square Enix. I don't know. There's a desire for them, and I'm happy for it.
Yeah, and that's by Exceed Games. They seem to bring a lot of games to Xbox. And it really bothers me. Like, we were going to talk about this later, but we may as well talk about it now. Like, every single time you see someone on Twitter talk about like the need for more JRPGs on Xbox, you have people talking like saying, "Oh, nobody buys those games on Xbox. Nobody wants those games on Xbox." And it's like, if you go on Twitter and go to any Square Enix post, it's people really asking for these games to come over, and they can't have a player base or fan base on the console if they don't consistently put games on the platform. And the games they do put on the platform are cherry picked and never advertised. Like, to this day, I've still never seen an actual trailer for Star Ocean 6 at all. Like, I've got it installed, played a little bit. I really need to get back to it after I finish Star Wars, but like, I've not seen any marketing for that game. Same with Crisis Core, and I've talked about how good Crisis Core is on this podcast multiple times. I still haven't seen an advert for it on TV or on YouTube, which is crazy because that was a big release for them. And you see these like smaller developers like Xseed putting their games on the platform. You have the bigger publishers like Sega and Bandai Namco putting their games on Xbox. So it's like, do the games not sell on Xbox and these publishers are just throwing money down the drain? Because these games aren't going in Game Pass. Like, these developers are wanting to sell the game. Like, that's the whole point of them putting the game on the platform without going into Game Pass. So it's like, how come these publishers are willing to put the games on the platform, but Square Enix isn't? Like, that is the weird thing. Like, Logan, do you think it's weird that like Square Enix is just the ones that just don't?
Yeah, the whole Square thing is very much the tinfoil hat. Like, makes you wonder stuff. Like, well, what is going on here? Like, this isn't vibing. This isn't passing a vibe check. And you've got smaller, publishers and studios like Xseed. You have, I think P-Cube. I can't remember. They did like the Exomon and games like that. And then you've got Sega and Bandai bringing major games over. You've got Spike Chunsoft has been bringing their older games over now. Like, it is opening up, and they're getting some Japanese indies. They're getting some classic hits are finally coming to the platform. A whole bunch of stuff, but Square Enix, for whatever reason, just it's like an allergic thing to Xbox. It's like, oh no, it's like they see the logo, it's like they throw it away. There's like, can't stand it. I don't get it.
Yeah, and we say this exclusivity thing continuing because, we may as well talk about this now. I didn't actually have this topic listed, but we have to talk about it. And that's Metal Gear Solid 5. Or I should say Metal Gear Solid 3. The remake. Now, when it comes to Metal Gear rumors, it's been all over the place for months now. However, there's been a few things that have been fairly consistent. That there is a new Metal Gear Solid collection that's going to be multi-platform that will include the first Metal Gear Solid game, which is great because we've never seen the first Metal Gear Solid game on an Xbox console before. And the other rumor is that Metal Gear Solid 3 is getting a full-on remake, and it's going to be PlayStation exclusive. Now, recently, Jez from Windows Central has mentioned that it's likely possible that it's a timed exclusive. And, we see it on Twitter all the time and on YouTube. People will act that PlayStation is like the owner of Metal Gear, they'll act like Metal Gear is de facto exclusive. Like they talk about it like it's a first party game. Like I've noticed this for years now. You know, they'll say, "Hey, who wants a PlayStation 5 remake of Metal Gear Solid 4?" And then put like the little blue like PlayStation mark in the corner of a thumbnail. Like that's what they do. And I think it's stupid that these companies are limiting their money potential. Let's be honest. Like when Square Enix, let's say Final Fantasy VII, when they make a game and it's like PlayStation 5 exclusive, they aren't limiting their game to 30 million PlayStation 5s that are out in the wild. They limit themselves to a small portion of that because they aren't selling that many copies. And you're going to see the same with Metal Gear. Now, if it is timed exclusive, that is at least some, I should say, a silver lining on the situation. But it's just stupid that these publishers keep making these deals. And we will hear about this likely at a Konami showcase in June. But man, it's disappointing. It really is. At least the good news is that there will be a new collection coming. Now, again, these are just rumors, but when you hear rumors from multiple different sources for a few months and they all kind of have similar things in common, it tends to be true a lot of the time. Logan, what's your thoughts on that? Because like Metal Gear is like I love that franchise, but it is not a PlayStation exclusive franchise. It's a multi-platform franchise, which people act like an exclusive for some reason.
Yeah, I think it's largely because, the first two were on, PlayStation and PlayStation 2, and the third one as well. But then, since then, aside from the fourth one, they've all made it to Xbox, except for, the first one and the fourth one. Like, it has been longer a multi-plat franchise than a Sony-only franchise. Like, it's like one of those things where in its infancy stage it's viewed as one thing and then it just carries even if it decades later it's no longer accurate. Just like I see Crash Bandicoot and I see Spyro and I immediately think of PlayStation, but I'm like, you know what, these are actually pending this deal getting done, these are Xbox franchises, and they were they were made by studios and they had them on PlayStation, but PlayStation did not own those studios at the time that they made them, and they were sold off to Activision long before they got, Naughty Dog and Insomniac completely together under their own house. Yet people always, say those are Sony franchises. I'm like, they're multi-plat franchises. It's the same thing with the Konami thing. I will say it's sad and crazy to say, but in the year 2023, I have more faith in Konami actually making a good game and porting it to Xbox than I do Square Enix, which is, insanity. But they finally have decided to make games again instead of pachinko machines, so I'm happy to hear that. And we've got all these Castlevania ports and other stuff. So I have faith that these games will come to Xbox. I think even Silent Hill 2 Remake will eventually find its way to Xbox. But, I don't like timed exclusivity. But to be honest, I get it. I get why people do it. But I'd rather, make the thing either a full-blown exclusive or don't. Don't do this whole, I'm just going to keep it away from you for a year until you forget about it, and then you can have it like some has-been franchise. It's just, it's scummy, just frankly.
Yeah. Oh, we have another super chat by Nick W for $4.99. Thank you very much. He says, other than Metal Gear Solid 4, all of the games haven't been exclusive to PlayStation. Even Metal Gear Solid is on PC. I didn't even know the first game was on PC, so thanks for that.
I didn't either.
Yeah, I knew that the HD collection and 2 and 3 were. It might have been Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance, but I had no idea the first game was on PC. I may have to check that out, because my PC could run a 30-year-old game at this point. But yeah, thank you very much, Nick W, for the super chat. Yeah, I mean, the other day I put out a post listing all the main Metal Gear games on Xbox, and I said, look, they've been multi-platform. And of course, this is the thing I hate about Twitter. People nitpick the living hell out of everything. and someone listed every single Metal Gear Universe game that didn't come to Xbox. They even listed the bloody N-Gage game. Like, don't do that shit with me. Right? I was trying not to swear this week, but don't do that crap with me, right? I have Metal Gear Acid on the PlayStation Portable, right? I have that game. It's on my shelf next to me, right? I was talking about mainline Metal Gear games. I had a bunch of people quote tweeting me, by the way, saying I was wrong. Like, are we really including all of the mobile games? Because I had Metal Gear Solid 4 Mobile. It was a point-and-shoot game. It was basically a shooting gallery game on iPhone. You can't play that anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, there's been tons of Metal Gear games. There's Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Acid 2 on the PSP. Terrible, in my opinion. I didn't like that game. There was Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops. Not good, in my opinion. There's been like tons of offshoot games. There's probably games on those like crappy, cheap handheld games you get on like Tiger handhelds. Probably Metal Gear games there too. But yeah, Metal Gear Solid, like, they are really short games, by the way. I don't know if people realize this. Like, you can finish each Metal Gear game in just a few hours if you skip all the talking. So I think when it comes to these remakes, they're going to like pad them out with a lot of extra content because people aren't going to spend $70 on something you can finish in 3 hours. But yeah, it's good that these things are happening. It's good that Metal Gear is going to be back on track again as a franchise. Konami's been out of the game for a long time. Like, outside of Metal Gear Solid 5 and Metal Gear Survive, which we pretend that doesn't exist, that game was just awful. Like, they've been like nowhere. They've put out their Pro Evolution Soccer game or whatever it's called now, but outside of that, they've been like nowhere. And I always say this, by the way, that Sony should buy Konami. Most people don't realize that Konami's main business is like gym equipment and vitamin water. Like, that's where they make their money. In fact, if you go into any of their establishments in Japan, there's like a little table or a shelf showing little bits of like items from all their different businesses, and gaming is like a tiny part, apparently. So like, I don't see any of these companies like Sony or anyone else buying a company that makes gym equipment and energy drinks. Like, it's not happening. But hey, oh, by the way, Castlevania, that's a rumored exclusive as well for PlayStation, which would really make me angry because Castlevania Lords of Shadow is a Castlevania game I think needs more love. Like, I'm sick of these timed exclusive games. Like, let's be honest, everyone listening right now, every time there's a showcase that isn't made by Microsoft, we are waiting till the end frame where it shows all the platforms at the bottom of the page, and we wait to see Xbox not listed there. I do it every single time now. Nintendo has a showcase, there's a game there, I go online to see the multi-platform trailer on their own YouTube page, no Xbox game listed there. Every single showcase. And at this point, I'm not surprised when some games are missing now. Oh, is it a Japanese company? Of course. De facto exclusive to Sony. It's annoying. Things need to change. I know in the US, they want to investigate Microsoft growing in Japan, which is a topic for another day. But anyway, Metal Gear, it's coming back at least somehow. Anyway, have you got anything else to say before we move on, Logan?
No, just the last thing would be like, even if it says all platforms, you can't 100% take that to mean Xbox anymore, apparently. So you really have to investigate to find out if it's coming or not.
That's a good point. I saw a still frame a while ago of Square Enix. I think it was the Mana series or something. On about how like this game is coming to all platforms. They listed like Stadia, PlayStation, Nintendo, PC, Amazon Luna, your Kindle, no Xbox, and it said all platforms. Which is stop doing that. Like, stop saying all platforms. But yeah, anyway, we'll move on. But yeah, about now in the show. If people enjoying it, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications. It really helps the channel out. Super chats alive and all that stuff. Okay, we need to talk about this game which was announced yesterday, and it's a big deal. So Amazon Games is now making a Lord of the Rings MMO with Embracer. Now, this is a big deal because Lord of the Rings games, we don't get them that often. And Amazon was originally working on an MMO for Tencent. That game got cancelled, unfortunately, and now they're working with Embracer because Embracer now owns the Lord of the Rings license, which is crazy. Now, obviously, this game's going to be years away. It's made by the team that developed New World, and as someone that doesn't play MMOs, for some reason, I watch content creators that talk about MMOs, like Asmongold talks about MMOs all the time and that. But New World seems like a promising MMO. It's just people complain about the lack of content. And that seems to be the big thing with these online games that people like. It's the game's good, but they want content. But now they're making an MMO game for Lord of the Rings. Logan, what do you think? Because it's actually a big deal.
Yeah, if they nail it, a major Lord of the Rings MMO could have massive staying power. And especially, Rings of Power, the series is out, and, it's in the, cultural zeitgeist. People are fully aware of Lord of the Rings things right now. So you've got that, and then you've got the Gollum game coming up at some point. I saw a listing on Xbox the other day for that, which, I was like, I had forgotten about that. And then, this game, other stuff, if they could bring back some of the old movie games, that would be fun. But yeah, it's one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, Embracer own the rights to, I think they actually own the rights to previous Lord of the Rings games. If that is the case, I'll look into it for next week's show, but, if that is the case, and we could see ports of those Lord of the Rings games, like the EA Lord of the Rings games on the original Xbox and PlayStation 2 were incredible. They even had, the actual scenes from the film instead of cutscenes, which, hey, it was fun at the time. But yeah, it's a weird move. I can't wait to see more. I just need more Lord of the Rings games. How do you have a universe that rich and do nothing with it at all? Which is a bit of a shame. We need single player games, multiplayer games, pretty much every genre you can cover in the Lord of the Rings universe. And I will say this, Lord of the Rings Online is still a thing. It still gets content apparently, which is crazy because that game came out in 2003 or 4. It's been a long time. And, people just want more of these universes. With all the technology we have now, how do we not have a open world Middle Earth game in an open world with rich storytelling? That's crazy to me that game does not exist. And hey, I wish them the best of luck. The game, they said, is going to be on PC and consoles. They specified consoles as well. So if you like MMOs and like the Lord of the Rings universe, keep that in mind. But I've mentioned in previous podcasts that Amazon Games Studios, they're working on multiple games for Xbox. So, I wouldn't worry about these games being, locked to Amazon Luna and PC. Outside of their previous MMOs, future games seem to be coming to consoles as well, which is a big deal because people want more. Anyway, we'll move on. Man, we have way too many topics today. Okay. Xbox Series X and S sales. Now, it came out yesterday that we reached 2 million sales. I'm going to say we, I mean Microsoft. I don't own Microsoft, but Microsoft's now sold 2 million consoles in the UK, which is it's good news, because after the last generation and what happened, Microsoft needed to get their footing right? And, of course, these media outlets, they did it again. Logan, you probably saw it as well. It said Microsoft's Xbox Series X and S together have both outpaced the Nintendo Switch. But, and of course there was a but, but it's stupid how everything needs to be turned into negative. Basically, in the past 3 years, we had a chip shortage in the world. Cars, microwaves, calculators, mobile phones, pretty much any device on the planet that uses, chips. There's been back orders by all these companies. It was hard to get a PlayStation or an Xbox for 2 years in the UK. People are now just starting to find Xbox Series X consoles on shelves in the UK. And for it to hit 2 million, now even though the Xbox One technically outsold more, there was no chip shortage back then. Microsoft sold it with the Kinect in the UK for, I think, it was £500, but now the Xbox Series S, and I should say X, is £450. It's probably going to drop this year. That's a big deal. Like, people thought the Xbox Series X and S weren't going to sell well. Logan, like, in the US, like, what is the Xbox Series X and S doing?
It seems to be doing well in the US. Like, I don't read charts too much, but I've been seeing, people post they're in stores all the time. Like, it's no longer like it's not as bad as like at the beginning of the pandemic where all these scout bots got everything and then sold them for outrageous prices online. It's not that bad, but um, the X's are still less readily available than the S. The S you can pretty much get anywhere. X is a little more, luxurious and harder to find, but it's still a lot easier to find than it was at the beginning of the pandemic. And it's good. They're making good numbers. They're rebounding. They're establishing that they're clearly not going away from the console space. No matter how many shadowy pundits declare otherwise, they're not going away from consoles, and they're committed to it.
Yeah, because we've seen this discourse for 20 years now that, Microsoft's not going to do another generation of consoles. They're out. They're going third party. And then every time there seem to be like positive Xbox numbers, people just try to spin it in a negative direction. And let's be honest, like, if there was only PlayStation around or just one console manufacturer, they could charge anything they wanted for video games. Anything. And there would be no innovation in the gaming space, which is not what you want at all. Like, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, as much as they may not like each other, they are all better off for just existing and doing well. Microsoft doing better, Sony does better. Sony does better, Microsoft does better. Nintendo does their own thing. Sometimes they have a console that doesn't do well, and sometimes they do one that sells absolutely amazing, like the Switch and the Wii and all that stuff. But it's just good to see the success because it leads to a higher chance of these games being ported over. People keep mentioning about the lack of sales of consoles. Well, if there's like X amount of consoles and there's less people subscribed to Game Pass, yet people say Game Pass is stopping people from buying games, there's millions of people that are still reliant on buying games to play them. So, yeah, bit of a weird rant there. But yeah, it's good to see the consoles doing well. We are all benefiting by them all selling well. Like, hell, I want the next Switch or whatever Nintendo does next to sell well. The PlayStation Pro or whatever, 5 Pro, whatever it's going to be called. Eventually, that will do well, and it'll push Microsoft. Although I will say this now, there's been rumors for the past few months that PlayStation is going to do a PS5 Pro, and there's been no rumors for Xbox at all. Normally, we've heard about a Project Lockhart or Scarlet, or Scorpio months in advance or a year in advance. There's been nothing for Xbox. So I have a prediction right now that next year the PlayStation 5 Pro will come out. It will be well received or whatever. And then a year later, Microsoft will do theirs. They'll do what they did with the One X. I personally don't think we need Pro consoles this generation. Some people get angry when I say that, by the way. But yeah, I think that'll happen. People can clip it if they want. It's the 17th of May 2023. I do not think Pro consoles are needed, but I think they will happen. And I think PlayStation will go first, and then Microsoft the year after, so 2025. My God, the years are just going. Logan, what's your thought on that? Do you think those will actually happen? Do you think Microsoft will actually do a Pro console?
I think it's a matter of, Sony set the stage. Like, if Sony does indeed make a pro console, then, you're almost obligated as Xbox to make a pro version as well, because if Sony's already leading in these areas, then it just feeds into another narrative that, they've upgraded and they have a mid-tier, mid-gen refresh console, and Xbox isn't following suit. So it's like, what's going up? Are they admitting this or that? And it would create a whole bunch of nonsense. So I think if PlayStation does indeed make one, Xbox will make one as well. And I'm with you. I don't think they're needed. I still think they're just scratching the surface of the tech they have, especially since it's taken so long to get it in everybody's hands. And I'm still seeing a few games out there that frankly still look like Xbox One gen games or PS4 gen games, not next gen. So to me, it's not necessary, but if they make one, I'll get it because I want the best Xbox or PlayStation I can have, experience wise. But I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot, and I think it's something we need to talk about because people just seem split down the middle. You have these massively like powerful graphics cards on PC, like the 40 series, and like there's developers that aren't optimizing for them. Like people are spending like stupid prices on these like really cool but powerful cards, and games are running like crap on them. Right? Games just need better optimization. Like I'm no developer, I'm not going to pretend that I know what's going on behind the scenes, but like for 2 years straight, almost we had 60 frames across the board. Like if people look from the launch of the Xbox Series X and S and the PlayStation 5, everything, literally everything was 60 frames. Like some had 30 frames modes for like, extra like visuals and stuff, but everything pretty much has been 60. And then we get a Plague Tale, people lose their minds because it was 30 frames. And then Gotham Knights, people lose their minds. Although, funny enough, a Plague Tale Requiem just got a 60 frames mode and 120 frames mode, from what I can tell. And people are saying that the performance is amazing and it looks great still. So we just need better optimization. As a content creator, I've said before, I benefit if they do more hardware. Everyone that talks about games and hardware knows for a fact that hardware gets more views. Like, it just does. And, like, I'm saying, like, Microsoft and Sony, they just don't need to do it. They really don't. They could do Slims down the line. Or maybe a digital-only, Series X or a Series S with a disk drive or something like that. But I just don't see the point of a Pro console when it's not 2016 where they're pushing 4K TVs. There's no technology at the minute that's requiring new televisions. Not really. So I just don't see the point. This topic wasn't even listed, and I just wanted to rant about it again because I still think the idea of Pro consoles this generation is absolutely stupid. Like, I just don't see the point. Who knows? Maybe we'll find something out at, some June showcases when, this is how you could really tell when developers are thinking about the future, is that when it comes to the consoles they list of a game they announced, and they just list Xbox and PlayStation and not specifying a particular console, that's when you know they're working on, next gen or Pro console stuff. So, anyway, I just don't. By the way, chat, please let me know. Do you really want a Pro console? Like, really? Like, because and if people listen to this afterwards, like, let me know in the comments. Like, do you really want a Pro console? Like, are you gonna get more 4K out of it, or 60 frames? I honestly can't see a universe where these Pro consoles come out and we just absolutely don't get 30 frames games anymore. I just do not see it happening. It's silly. Like, the consoles we have are super powerful. They're capable of ray tracing. They're capable of 120 frames per second. Like, you can play Call of Duty on a Series S at 120 frames per second. That's really impressive for a tiny console. Like, we don't need another £500 console to buy halfway through the generation when developers aren't even squeezing every little bit of power that they should. But hey, when it happens, or if it happens, I'll rant about it then, and obviously make content because that's what I do. Anyway, we'll move on. But yeah, okay, we'll talk about this quick. So Sega announced today, or kind of hinted at it, that they are going to move to start selling $70 games, or should I say £70 games. There's been some pushback today, saying that they don't want these £70 games. Personally, I think the price of $70 or £70 games is stupid. Certain publishers like Activision and Sony have reported that even though they are still making profits, there's less copies being sold. So they making the money back because of the price going up, but there's less people buying games. And every single time I post footage of a £70 game, I get replies saying, hey, I'm going to wait for it to go cheaper. And I can't blame them because these prices are stupid. And every single time the $70 or £70 price is brought up, I get at least one annoying person in the comments that says, but in the 90s, we were spending $100 or £100 for a game. It's because cartridges...
Completely different.
Yeah, completely different. And I hate the fact that I have to mention this all the time. Cartridges were manufactured across different factories. Now you have these companies that press a disc, a Blu-ray costs pennies, and then digitally, there's nothing being shipped. Nothing. But if you wanted a game in the 90s, the game had to be pressed to a chip, copied, and then those chips where the game was made were made in one factory, where the chip was made of hundreds of different components. Then they were put in the shells in a different factory, and then they put the sticker on and all that stuff. Then they were shipped somewhere else to put into boxes with the manual, and then they were shipped on these massive trucks, taking up more space than a Blu-ray case or a 0% size of a digital file. That's why those games were expensive. In the UK, Nintendo 64 games, by the way, were sometimes £90, £100 back then. And what happened? The original PlayStation came out. Games were on CD-ROMs, CDs. They were on discs. And then the prices of those games went down massively. PlayStation games in the UK never used to cost £90 because the discs cost next to nothing to make. Same with the Sega Saturn and the Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, Xbox. That's why those games went cheaper. Cartridges were overpriced because the games took freaking forever to make. They were expensive to make. And now these companies are wanting to charge $70. I still can't get over that price. I still can't. £70 in the UK can get you about a year of Disney Plus. That's crazy. And you have these digital deluxe versions coming out at £90 or £100, and it's sad, man, because this means next generation in 2028 people will defend £80 or $80 games. It's not an if, by the way. It's a when. It's absolutely going to happen. $80 next generation will be the standard price, and then people will defend that too. And then the generation after that, there'll be 90, then 100, 120, and they'll just keep going up. And it's sad because I like Sega, but I it becoming a standard is stupid. Sega's, I should say, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, absolutely amazing game. And people would tell me all the time saying, hey, I don't want to pay full price for this game because £70 is a lot. I can't blame them. An amazing game, but £70 is a lot to ask these days. Especially when butter and just simple things cost £5-7. Logan, what's your thought on this? Because I'm adamant that it's just going to keep going up. Next generation, games will be 80 because everything now is 70 and they're defending it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the slope you're on now. It's like a avalanche or a snowball just rolling downhill. It's at what point does the dam break or it just stop? And it's I don't know. It's they're just going to keep going up as long as people are okay with it and are paying it. If people just stopped buying them or, waiting till they were all on sale or this, maybe you'd think they'd eventually get it. But, I'll be honest, there are some games that, I'd be fine with paying a quote superstar tax on, a $70, $80 game. If the game is just otherworldly incredible and it truly feels oh my goodness, this is Nirvana in a game. A risk of the Star Wars conversation again, Jedi Survivor. I paid the full, deluxe version, bought it, and worth every cent. And games like that, truly magnificent games, I'm fine with paying that. But not to throw too much shade at Arcane and Xbox right now, but Redfall really is your first $70 game. What that game was like and what it was in development, and you put it out there and you put that as your first tentpole $70 franchise game, like, what are you thinking? Like, seriously? Like, that just, I don't know, like, read the room. Like, there's got to be better ways to handle it.
Yeah, like didn't Nintendo raise the price to $70? Like, isn't the news
Yeah,
out?
Nintendo gets away with anything. They can sell you cardboard box with a sticker on it, and you'll pay $100 for it. It's just what they do.
They technically did that with Labo.
I know.
And you were saying with the whole Star Wars thing. Like, I bought the digital deluxe version. Like, I was like, but it was 10% off, and I got some cool outfits. Like, I was like, I'm a bloody hypocrite, but I got it with Microsoft reward points, so hey, it's not that bad. I just think that games across the board need to have a scale. Like, too much now, we're seeing these games just de facto £70, and that shouldn't be the case. Thankfully, there are some publishers like Focus Entertainment. By the way, I will give them like all the praise at every opportunity, because they clearly are listening to people. Their games, just like the prices are all over the place. Like $49.99 seems to be their price they're going for in the UK. The Aliens game, Aliens Dark Descent, I think that's £33, which that's great. I don't know what the US price is, but it's probably like around the same. But like the scale and price thing needs to be a thing, because look at the sports games, right? These like FIFA and Madden games every year, where it's the same game, but it's a roster update and they've changed the physics model, right? And you're going to pay $70 this year for the same game you have on your shelf now, but hey, there's new players on certain teams. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Like, in an ideal world, like sports games, they would have a game and it'd come out, and they would you could pay for like a DLC or expansion for the next year, or like if there was trades or upgrades or roster movement or whatever, and you could just get the next season's players and upgrades and everything onto the game, and you just do that every year for a certain price. Like, to me, that seems more reasonable and right. But frankly, sports fan games guys are suckers, and we just keep buying them, even though it's a ripoff, honestly. But it is what it is. But I agree, there should be scaling price. And Focus is one of my favorite publishers out there. They've been putting gold. Like, I see that logo on something, I know I'm gonna enjoy it. And their price scaling is very appealing, because smaller studio, smaller game, and sometimes they make a game that's worth $70-$80, and then sometimes these games are smaller scale to where it's more like a $20 to $40 game. So the idea that they actually acknowledge that and are honest about it, instead of like, oh, these chumps will pay $70 just because it's a game on a next-gen console, even if it's got 5 hours of content and no replayability, or it's buggy as heck, because they accept it as the price. Like, it's way more complicated.
Before we continue, we have a new £5 super chat by Pyro Mac D. Thank you very much. It says, normalize buying games 6 months after launch, often at least 25% off, and the game is fully patched. Stop giving game publishers money for undercooked products. I mean, you're right there. My only problem with excuse me, my only problem for me is that, like, I feel compelled to buy a game if I want a sequel to it, right? So, like, Jedi Survivor, it's pricey, but I want a third game. I went out, bought it full price, because that's how unfortunately, that's how these publishers look at it. Like, they look at the first few months of sales, not the first year or year and a half. And that's the unfortunate thing of it. I will say this, Matt D, you are right. There are a lot of people that tell me, it doesn't matter what console they have, they are adamant about waiting months after launch to buy these games. Like, look at Atomic Heart, which I've got gameplay on screen right now. Like, I love that game. When it came out, it was buggy, like really buggy. And fortunately, it takes me that long to get through games. I experienced the game with multiple patches, and it was significantly better by the time I finished the game. But a lot of people will just wait now for games because 9 times out of 10 there are games shipped with problems, and I think this $70 is just going to hurt people in the long run. And yeah, thankfully, Focus Entertainment and Embrace that they do actually have a scale when it comes to their games. Anyway, yeah, it's just weird because I can't stand seeing that price. Like every time I go online, people are, especially in the UK, I know in Canada and Australia, getting screwed big time for these prices. And
extortion, yeah.
yeah, like people freaked out over here in the UK when it came to that £70 price. And if you think about it, let's look at a Series S. A Series S costs about £230, and the fact that a video game is almost a third of that just blows my mind. It's just weird. Publishers need to look at scaling these prices. It's the only way for it to work. Anyway, we'll continue. Okay, we've got a few main topics left. Logan, the Activision deal a few weeks ago by the CMA wasn't approved. People lost their absolute minds. They acted like it was the end of the world. Logan, you went AFK for 2 weeks because let's face it, it was a battlefield online. The quote tweets, the replies, pretty mean. Let's be honest, but it is what it is. And for the past few weeks, people thought it's done. Well, it turns out the EU Commission have approved it. Now, pretty much everywhere else outside of the FTC and the CMA, it looks like this Activision deal thing might actually go through with a lot of caveats, but regardless, it looks like it's going to go through. Logan, you know all this legal crap better than me. What's going on?
Well, it's really interesting because, there are some people in certain camps that are like, oh, it won't go through. The CMA is this almighty, omnipotent entity, and nothing can change that. And there's, it's ironclad. There's no chance. And then there are other people that are like, yeah, forget what they say. We'll just do this or that. And then there's, the middle ground where they'll reach a compromise or something. But for the most part, right now, they are in appeal process to the CAT, the tribunal in the UK for the CMA, and the tribunal can look at it and say, okay, we agree with the CMA's findings, and you're just gonna have to deal with it, or we found some problems, but we understand kind of where they're coming from, so we'll send it back to them, and they'll revise it, and then we'll go from there. Or they can go, you know what? These guys are irrational, or this is illogical, or there is no grounds for this. We pass it, move along. Or, and then on top of that, there's the Prime Minister of the UK. I can't pronounce his name, but he has put out some comments, even on Microsoft-owned LinkedIn, that, hey, we're going to start steering the CMA to where they basically don't get in the way of tech and stuff because they want jobs and they want it to be Silicon Valley. And lo and behold, lots of regulation is kind of not helping the idea of tech innovation. So obviously you want regulation so that companies don't get away with scummy stuff and consumers get hosed with horrible content and prices and yada yada yada. But there's also, such thing as over-regulation, where if you make it such a royal pain to have to conduct business in a country, or make it to where, frankly, you can't conduct business properly in a country, it makes people, wonder, should we have our jobs here, or should we take them elsewhere? And Activision not so subtly hinted at just that. Bobby Kotick and Lulu had, tweets and statements out there basically saying, thank you, EU, for passing this, and we're going to have all these countries under your umbrella, we have staffing there and all this stuff. They're going to continue to thrive. They have a government that supports them, and we're going to invest even more in those regions. And then they basically had called this UK out and said they're closed for business right now with this attitude. And then Satya Nadella today had an interview where they basically asked him about the nuclear option. They're like, would you consider, like, if you get this done and approved everywhere, including the US via court or agreement with the FTC, but the UK for some reason holds out and they're the only ones, would you consider a scenario where you just don't sell stuff to them? And he said, well, let's let it get there. But he didn't say no. So he left the door open, it seems like. So the fact that people say it's impossible and they would never do that, like, that didn't sound like a man to me that has tabled that idea. So there could be a scenario where it's, they just pull ABK products out of the UK, potentially, if the deal doesn't pass in the UK, but everywhere else. Or they could make it to where there's cloud, restrictions. Like maybe we can't have these type of games on cloud services in the UK. Or maybe we don't have cloud in the UK. Or there's all kinds of various angles they can take if it came to that point. Or, the nuclear option of just like, all right, you're closed for business, bye. I mean, is it likely they'll do that? No, but the fact that he left the door open for that should really, really tighten the screws and make the UK sweat a little bit about this, because they're talking all this big talk about how they want to implement and make their country and region thrive for tech like Silicon Valley, yet they're trying to suffocate a market that is just starting by saying that it's better it suffocates and flops around like a fish than it is for it to thrive because Microsoft is involved. It's not a good look, and they're getting roasted by their own peers and the regulatory bodies. Their magistrates, interviewed them today and grilled them on it. They released a very shaky tweet thread that came off kind of like a somebody knew they messed up kind of tweet thread. Like, well, see, we stand by our decision, and this is why we're right, and they're wrong, and they're okay to be wrong, but they're wrong, and we're right. And it's like, really? Like, a confident person, let alone a competent entity, wouldn't throw out a whiny and shaky statement like that. So to me, I think at the end, this thing gets done one way or another. And if it comes to it, the nuclear option does seem to be on the table for Microsoft.
Yeah, it's a strange situation because like all these other companies, actually countries are agreeing, saying it's allowed, and the weird thing is like the UK they are very protective over monopolies in the UK. Like it makes no sense, but it just happens. Like they protect Apple, and the same thing's going with Sony. Like the market leader gets this sort of barrier of extra protection because it's bad for consumers if other ones want to compete. Like it's all over the place, and our current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has mentioned that they do want the UK to be a tech based country, like much like how Silicon Valley is in the US. And I get that, but these kinds of decisions is stifling, progress and innovation. It's going to keep going on for years. By the way, I just checked while you were speaking. This is how messed up the UK is, by the way. So since 2010, we've had 6 prime ministers. 6. One of them was in the office so little time that a lettuce outlasted the prime minister.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, I'm not making that up. Like, if you're not from the UK, like that may be news to you. But yeah, there was a live feed for a month of a lettuce to see what would last longer, the lettuce or the prime minister. The lettuce won. like it's not doing that. We're not doing well over here when it comes to all this stuff. And the CMA thing, it's a mess. Like, I get it. It's a very tiresome subject. It's been going on for way too long. But the good news is, it looks like there's going to be some movement going on with this. Like, I still can't believe I let this one. But yeah, it looks like Satya, like they could pull games from the UK. By the way, I don't think they'll pull games from the UK. I honestly believe this is how it's going to go down. If the CMA doesn't move, I think the whole Activision deal will go forward everywhere. But in the UK, things will maybe stay the same. You know, you can only buy games from the consoles in the UK. No Game Pass stuff. And it's like, if hypothetically they pull games, that's going to hurt, man. Like, a lot of people over here buy Call of Duty. And, like, am I going to get to the point where I have to import games again? Like I used to back when the GameCube came out? If the nuclear option happens, maybe, but...
Or VPN, or...
Yeah, or VPN, like... But, wow, like, the fact that might actually be a thing... It's awful, because like there's millions of people that want to play Call of Duty, and Diablo. Like, Diablo is going to be massive next month, and it's just bad. Like, I don't understand how. And by the way, the other day I put out a post saying Sony's allowed to get 1 million like exclusive games in general. By third-party companies, but Microsoft isn't allowed to keep games that are multi-platform if they own the company. Basically, my point is, Activision games would still be multi-platform, and the amount of people that are just dumb AF, by the way, that reply to that saying, but Call of Duty would be exclusive to Xbox. Like, why are we living in this dream world where we're pretending that we all know Call of Duty is going to be on everything. Call of Duty is going to be on the Switch in future, or Switch 2, or whatever it's going to be called. Like, there's this weird worry that Call of Duty is just going to disappear. And they're forgetting that Activision, they own other games. Like World of Warcraft, I bet that comes to console in the next 2 years. All of the other Activision games, Diablo is probably going to sell like 10 million units or so. Probably higher than that, because a lot of people are looking forward to that, and it's been a long time since we've had a Diablo game. And this looks like the best yet, and it's arguably the best one I've ever played. And it's just been dragged out. Like, the UK can't be this tech-focused country if this crap's being pulled off all the time. It's stupid, and it makes me angry. Logan, have you got anything else to say on the topic before we move on?
Oh, just a couple things. One, to clarify something, like, I had tweeted out earlier that I was glad that they were at least considering the option of, the UK, nuclear option. Like, obviously, I don't want people to miss their games or to be deprived of it and have a market, just, effectively, amputated from the ecosystem. Like, I don't want that at all, but I was saying I'm glad that he's at least considering, the option as like a bluff or a potential like threat, to where he's like, look, we can do this. And the fact that he didn't flat out say no makes it to where that is still on the table, to which it applies pressure. It's a strategy. And so I'm glad that they are utilizing their strategies available. Like, I don't want people to get hosed and not be able to play their games anymore. Like, I'm all for more people doing it. But I think the fact that they're willing to at least consider that is a good message that they're going to see this thing to the bitter end. And that they're not going to walk away just because it's been a royal pain, because people don't understand the industry. That was one thing. And then a second thing was, Vestager from the EU, she is super smart and pragmatic and shrewd, and you can tell just listening to her, and the way she carries herself, and the way their press releases happen, and her tweets and interviews and comments. Like, someone like that wouldn't buy bullcrap from a company like Microsoft or somebody else if they were peddling something and they didn't really mean it or weren't accurate. She would see through that like, nothing. And so the fact that she's okay with it, and not only okay with it, that she sees it as a great thing for the industry as a whole, and that they had some concerns and they've been addressed, so they move on. Like that is what you want in a leader and a rational person in charge of an agency. And I think it's just night and day compared to this show we've been seeing elsewhere.
Hopefully it'll end soon. like, I still have flashbacks to last year, when I was thinking, oh, it'll be done by summer. Here we are a year later.
Yeah.
Like a year and a half long. And look, it's a topic that bores people, but we have to talk about it. But anyway, we'll move on. Final topic is, I need to talk about this. So Starfield, we get the game showcase next month, just in a few weeks, and then there's the Starfield thing. And people are excited, and I'm looking forward to Starfield because we haven't really had a game like that. It's a single player RPG about space exploration with that Bethesda style storytelling and RPG gameplay. And id Software is helping with the FPS combat, which is bloody great news, by the way. Like, of all developers, you want them to help. And it's all looking good. We got 15 minutes of gameplay last year, showing a variety of different gameplay elements, such as first-person combat, in-ship combat, ship building, base building, exploration, dialogue options, pretty much every aspect of the game. And every single time, I'm so angry, every single time I talk about this game, I get these same replies saying, I'm concerned because of Cyberpunk. It's going to be a buggy mess. It's No Man's Sky. It's No Man's Sky. It's No Man's Sky. Now, I'm fed up with this, to be honest. Like, this is the beautiful one. Don't get hyped, Jamie, because you'll be let down because of Cyberpunk. Stop telling people what to be hyped for. Like, Logan, you've probably seen this crap, right?
Yeah, you see it on all kinds of stuff. Like anybody posts something they're excited about, you almost inevitably end up with some clown show up and post something about like, this is why you shouldn't be happy, or that's mid, or wait till sale, or just some nonsense. Like, let people enjoy what they want to enjoy, as long as they're not hurting anybody else. It's their money, their time, they're happy with it. Let them be happy, and you do you.
Like, and this is no diss on No Man's Sky, but it's just a different game. Bethesda, you're getting Skyrim in space. But No Man's Sky is a game that features like 18 quintillion planets. All of it's procedurally generated. It's a game about survival. That's what that game is, and people just latching onto that idea and saying, "Hey, it's Starfield is No Man's Sky." Like, it just drives me absolutely mental because they're not the same game. If anything, there's one game that is out at the minute, kind of, that is somewhat similar to Starfield, and that is Squadron, I think it's called Squadron 52 or Squadron 47 for Star Citizen. Basically, the single-player component. And that's literally really close to what Starfield is, although it's mainly, like, about one person doing certain missions. But like Starfield, it's an RPG. It's Fallout. It's Elder Scrolls, but in space. And like people just latching onto this idea that it's No Man's Sky, and we have to be concerned about every game going forward because of Cyberpunk. That we can't keep doing this for every game, and people are allowed to be excited for certain games. They're allowed to be excited for Tears of the Kingdom. Cool, right? They're allowed to be excited for Spider-Man, even though there's no gameplay. Cool. But the second you talk about Starfield, the game we've seen 15 minutes of gameplay for, we have to be concerned because of Redfall, different game, different developer, and we have to be concerned because of Cyberpunk. Like, why are we doing this to ourselves? And remember, Cyberpunk was released on last-gen consoles as well. They built it for last gen, and then they put it on next gen consoles. The game just could not run on those consoles, and it was a bit of a mess. Fortunately, by the time I got to it, the game, flawless. No bugs, next gen enhanced, patched. But people just running with this narrative like, you can't be excited for this game because we have to make up some arbitrary fucking reasons for people not to be excited for games anymore. And it's doing my head in. Yet you're allowed to be excited for particular games by other different publishers. Like, what has been shown for Cyberpunk, I should say Starfield so far, that has me worried? Nothing. We've seen multiple different kinds of gameplay elements, and we're going to have a whole showcase dedicated to it that we're going to see in June. Yet, every single time I talk about it, I get this bloody No Man's Sky crap, and how you're not allowed to be hyped because of Cyberpunk. Like, what the hell is going on? Why is this what we're doing now with every game? It's doing my head in. And I say this: let people be excited. People were excited for Tears of the Kingdom. People were excited about other games. But the second you mention Cyberpunk, I'm all over the place today. The second you mention,
traitor.
Yeah, I'm not doing myself any favors. But like the second you mention Starfield, people get angry. That it just boggles my mind. Like, let people be hyped. What's another big game that's coming out this year? It's going to be a Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. We know nothing about it. It's a single-player game. People are going to be concerned trolling that. Are we going to be concerned trolling Spider-Man? Because guess what? If we judge on previous releases, no one has had any issues against Bethesda single-player RPGs. But now we have to be concerned about this one. Based on what? There's no correlation at all. But people have to be concerned trolling. And it's doing my head in. And it's something that, I talk about games on a daily basis on Twitter. I obviously have a channel that's focused on gaming. But, we have to concern troll it. Do we concern troll Hellblade 2 based on nothing? Do we concern troll Forza Motorsport based on nothing? Age of Empires 4 based on nothing? Because we have to do it for Starfield all of a sudden, which is just freaking crazy. And it's annoying. It's really annoying. Logan, have you got anything else to say on the topic before we close out the show? Because I've ranted for about 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I get concern when concern is warranted. Like, when Cyberpunk launched, I got people being concerned about CD Red and what they were doing. And if they were in over their head with a new IP and a new kind of style or this or that. But then, months and years have passed and they've remedied it and it's doing better than ever. And they're in great hands again. And, Bethesda had issues with Fallout 76. It's true. It was horrible when it launched. But now it's a super thriving, welcoming community and a great game. And honestly, I'll just put it out there. I think the reason why Starfield is getting so much, just paranoid delusions and hate and microscoping and dissection and all this crap is because it's an exclusive. If it was never announced as an exclusive, I don't think you would be seeing anywhere near this level of, tedious, rummage about it. It's point blank, it's because it's an Xbox exclusive that it's being handled this way. And the fact that sites need to cash checks and, what's easier than hating on the Series S or the potato or, calling for Phil Spencer's job or, is there a culture crisis at these studios or, oh, they're doing this protagonist this way, so it means this. It's like, an easy one is Starfield's in trouble or Bugthesda. It's easy clicks, easy money, and Xbox hate, as, Nick from Xbox Era accurately put, sells. Xbox hate is where it's at, content-wise. And, we love Xbox, so that's obviously the opposite of what we do. But Xbox hate is quite popular, and it gets the ball rolling, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that that's the state of how things are at the minute. Hopefully things will get better over the summer. But yeah, I'm just sick of being told not to be hyped about video games. Games can live up to, the hype. Like I've said before, Elden Ring lived up to the hype and even exceeded it. Star Wars Jedi Survivor, I'm saying it's exceeding the hype. And, why do we have to concern troll this game? Just because it's an Xbox exclusive? People weren't concern trolling before we saw gameplay and before we thought it was going to be multi-platform. But now that we have seen gameplay and it looks good, people have to concern troll it. It's dumb. It needs to end. Anyway, that's it for today's show. everyone in chat has been awesome. We'll be back at the same time next week. We actually missed some topics out just to try and keep it in the 2-hour timeline. But yeah, again, everyone in chat's been awesome. The chat's always awesome, by the way. Like, we don't have like bots anymore, thankfully, and no arguing. Everyone's cool. And here's the thing: not everyone has to agree with me. Like, I'm all for people wanting to have an actual chat or disagree with me and mention points. But like the fact that some people just reply saying "corp," like stop that. It doesn't even make sense for one thing. Anyway, again, everyone in chat's been awesome. We'll be back at the same time next week. I have a video coming out next week. Hopefully, one out on Thursday. My schedule's all over the place at the minute. But yeah, last week's video is currently in the description down below. 10 games coming to Xbox Series consoles in May. Funnily enough, 9 of those games release from the 20th onwards. So there's that. Highly recommend people watch that. Again, back at the same time next week. We are out. Peace, everybody.